we're today talking about this new version of React and new version in Next. And thing is, like, a lot of my talking points will be same as the last talk because there were some main changes in React 19. But yeah, let's do it anyway. So let's look at a bit of history. In React 16, specifically 16.8, React introduced hooks. What happened in 17? Anybody? React compiler. Well, kind of nothing happened. That was the title. If you go back and see the blog, release blog, they literally said that. 18 had concurrency, yeah. And 19, anybody? Like, what is the main kind of theme? Yeah, they have been testing the compiler for quite some time. They have been adding server components for quite some time, so they decided to make it all stable now. Yeah. So it's all about stability for React 19. There's not new features. We have been seeing all of them in Next.js and in RCs and stuff. So yeah, let's start with this thing called server actions. Well, actually form actions, because server actions you have already seen in Next.js. So how many of you understand this simple code? This is nothing new. So basically React 19 made this change, so you can, instead of, so this is extremely simple because it's just console.log, but it often gets very complicated as it's more complicated. So here what you can do is simply create a function. It can live anywhere you want, and you just simply pass this as a function. So this is React specific, this is not HTML spec. In HTML you cannot pass functions as actions, but in React you can simply do this in React 19. And this is nothing to do with server. This entirely runs on the client. So yeah, that's a new thing that has come. This is the same thing that's happening, but it's a little bit more complicated. So you can use your view state, you can use everything because it's entirely on the client side. It's not server action as you might have seen in Next. So that's one of the big changes. You can even make the post request from here, like you would do in a handle submit or a handle click or anything like that. Right. So, and you can also add like transition. You can also use start transition and use the transition to store the pending states and the errors using the use transition hook, which gives you the pending state. And this will make it kind of non-blocking, because the other one, it blocks the rendering of React, but this one will be non-blocking if you use the start transition. But React also has introduced server actions also stably now. Now this was your function before, which was the client side. You simply add the use server, and now it's the server function. That's it. But it's not that's it. But you have to use something like Next or some very complicated Webpack config or some Vite config or something like that to make it work. But in effect, that's all you have to do. Now this code runs on a server, React or Next or whichever the bundler is, will make a kind of a request or and it will do all of this for you. And here you would be not doing console, or you would do something like fetch from a database or something like that. And this is the same thing we are doing, but using the I think this, yeah. Right. So this was a slide we just saw using the start transition. And okay, so I just forgot one slide here. So this is the new hook that was introduced. As Srinivas also mentioned, use action state. If you have used Next.js for sometimes, this hook used to be called use form state, which is now been renamed as use action state because it can also be used outside forms. But here it's being used as a form. So yeah, so these are the same. This thing using start transition, and so here we are using is pending, and we are using use states for storing our errors and storing our form state. But here we just use it using the use action state, which can ease out things and which can be easier as a boilerplate. Now there is one more hook, use form status, and for this So basically, let's say you have a form and you have a button. Now button can have in its own understate or inside state, but if this design button is a child of a form that is using a form action, you can use form status to get its parent's form's status. So this pending will only work if this design button is a child of a form. If it's not, then it won't work. So yeah, but this is a helpful thing because we often want to separate our buttons and stuff, and if it can hook into the state of the parent's form, it's very useful for disabling, for loading states, for showing different messages and things like that. Now second thing or the next thing that React introduced is compiler. So have you used React's? Do anybody know what React scan? Yes. So I'll just open up a quick demo. So Upadhyay made this quick small tool that shows how many renders your page is having. So if I just quickly show the demo. So this is a quite optimized page, it's not having a lot of renders. But often if you go and run this tool on something like Twitter, something like Instagram, or any other like React websites, you'll see a lot of re-renders. All these things are re-rendering. So what are the tools that React gives us to improve our re-renders? Anybody? Use memo. Use callback, yeah, and also React memo. So yeah. Anyways, so yeah. So yeah, these are the three tools, and React compiler basically removes these tools. That's it. But as we have been saying that this React 19 is all about stability, so compiler is not about stability, it's experimental. You have to enable it using basically a Babel plugin right now. But yeah, if you use it, you basically can remove all your memos and callbacks from your apps, and React compiler will add it wherever it's needed. Right. So the next hook is use. So yeah. So basically, you can use a promise or you can use a context, and basically they are trying to have this kind of resource, any resource. Like currently there are two resources, promise and a context, but React team is saying we'll add more resources or whichever, and we'll use this use. It's very difficult to talk about it, but yeah. So now your resolved data will come in this, and your context you can directly use like this. But then again, they are saying that this is not something that you should use in your apps. It's more for library authors. But yeah, you can still use. Yeah. So another thing is the document metadata. Has anybody here used React Helmet? Yes. Yeah, and Next.js also gives some things, and there are other libraries also. So but now React has this built in. So you are seeing this is not the HTML file that exists if you are using like Vite or something. This is inside HTML, or so inside the React component, we are typing the meta tags and the title post. So this will get hoisted in your HTML. It will not exist here inside your post. It will go into the head tag, and React will automatically move this to the head tag. But the only problem is that, which I see is like now any component can override the meta tags and stuff. Now for this, they have given this a precedence hook, attribute that you can add to these things. But then it's also making it easier without using things like React Helmet or some other hacky things that you might have been using before. Right. So since it's a flash talk, I just cover a few things. Yeah, so form status we looked at. Now optimistic, Srinivas talked about a bit. Now one of the big thing is the ref as a prop. Now, has anybody used forward ref before?
Yes. Yes.
So you don't have to use it anymore. It's just a prop. Yeah?
Use imperative handler.
Yeah. And yeah, we already talked about start transition. And yeah, one more thing that's not mentioned here is this thing called rendering to static. So for example, in the previous versions, if you had to use React server components, you had to have a server. Now you can render your React thing to a static. So when it's building, it will calculate all the, for example, this works for things like blogs or stuff. Now you can render it to string, so it will fetch from database on build and save the state. Now previously things like remix or other things had to have some hacks that they booted a server and that they calculated all these things in real time. But now they can also use this new API, which is not mentioned here for some reason, that for static, for building to static, right? So I'll quickly move to Next.js, and this is from their blog post that they have made the decision to align with the upcoming release of React 19. So it's not about stability for them; it's about cache. So has anybody used middleware file in Next.js?
Yeah.
So they have created this new file called instrumentation.js, which is mostly for your analytics code or your Sentry code, all things like that. And yeah, so for what happened is middleware used to get very bulky and it used to run a lot, like slow down a lot. So they created a new thing just for analytics and things like that, telemetry, and not analytics as such, more like telemetry and error reporting. So this is also stable. Then I think the biggest change is, or the biggest addition is use cache. Actually, it's a directive, just like your use client or use server, but it's not React. It's Next.js specific. So if you use cache at the top, it will cache everything. So it will cache inside. If you have it will cache the components. It will cache the functions. It will cache everything. But you can also use at a component level like this, and all your if you have some expensive function or like something that does not change a lot, you can also cache a specific function. Yeah, and you can also like have some settings on it using they have some so this next cache package, you can import certain other things from there and provide cache life. When does it expire? When does it have to buzz the cache and things like that. But use cache is also experimental. Right. The another one is Turbo is now default. Turbo pack is now default in Next.js, and these are some stats from their blog post. The Turbo pack does not do something, but we'll never know. So another thing is form. They have this form component. They copied it from Remix. If you have, so what will this do is basically it will create a GET request. It would create a GET request if you don't use the next form. If you use the default from HTML, it will just refresh the page. It will send a GET request to search using these queries. Now, what this form component is doing, it will do the exact same thing, but it will do a client-side navigation to that page, and it will add all your query params to it. It will in a user experience, it will function exactly the same, except it will be faster because it's client-side navigation. And it won't lose all your state because it's also client-side navigation, and no full page refresh is required. So there are some few other things. So they have made a lot of improvements for self-hosting in Next.js because it was very difficult. And also, I'll just one more thing about cache. So this cache is usable only right now if you're using like something like Vercel or Netlify. I think also has, but if you are deploying it yourself, it's very difficult to achieve the infrastructure for this right now. So, but they're working on it, and they're saying that they're improving the self-hosting features, and all of this changes, like there are lots of breaking changes in Next.js. For example, if anybody has used like route file in Next.js, which is to create APIs in Next, yeah. So previously the params, you could just use it. You have to now await it. So there are many other breaking changes like that. But this code, they have also released a code mod which you can run, and it will all try to fix all your breaking changes in Next.js. And I think that's all for today.